look, I had no idea. I was lost. But I had too much pride to get out the class right then. That's a mistake that you all shouldn't have. If you can't handle it, then wait until you can. So anyway, I stayed in there out of pride. At the end of the course, and I was still just as lost as when I started, the instructor said that we would take an exam or write a paper. Well, I knew I couldn't take an exam. I didn't understand anything that had happened today. So I decided that I would write a paper. Now, how can I write a paper and impress anybody, especially when the instructor said that we were to attach 10 empty sheets of paper, and then he would give a grade, and 10 other students would give a grade. And if other students wanted to give a grade, they could attach extra sheets. Oh my goodness. Now, my embarrassment is going to be complete. Not only am I going to get an F from the instructor, but I'm going to get an F from everybody in the class. So then I tried to figure out, what should I do? Too late to drop it. Went over there and said, look, I finally give up. And they said, sorry, you're the end of the term. You know? So anyway, I went over to the library. I looked up everything I could in passing that I could write a paper on. Well, again, remember, I didn't understand anything. But then I ran across some strange belief called solipsism. And I read it. It said that solipsism says that only one mind exists in the universe. And that all else is created by that mind. It's fiction. It is not real. And that mind then determines how one acts, but it doesn't have to, because nobody else exists but you. And I was fascinated by that. And I read everything I could, couldn't find very much to read, but I read everything I could. Then a devious idea occurred to me. I wrote my paper. I wrote 10 glorious pages of it. And in my paper, I started it off with, I am a solipsist. I am all that exists. This paper, this pen, this class, this student who was supposed to grade it, they don't exist. And so then I described how I became a solipsist. And then I described how lonely it was. And then I analyzed, how could I be lonely if I'm the only one around? Because lonely is comparative. Then I thought, I'm not lonely. I'm okay. I don't need anything. I am retired to myself. So then I didn't attach those 10 pages. Because why should I? So the day I turned my paper in, I came in and I paused before the teacher, and he says, you about to turn your paper in, Mr. Wingate? I looked at him and I turned and I walked out. Then I walked back and I said, okay, I'll play the game. I'm going to create you for right now. But you really don't exist. Paper doesn't exist. And I'm going to drop this paper here and go about my business. So then I dropped it. I stepped back in the class, looked out the window. And so then he was impressed by my conduct, especially after he read my paper while I was sitting back there in the back. So he said, Mr. Wingate, this is very clever. And so I looked up and I said, I don't think I want to create a class today. I'm going to create my dormitory room, and I'll be back after a while after I create this class again. So I walked off and left. So anyway, he says, where you going? And I just kept walking. So then, when I did come back, he told everybody how ingenious that was and gave me an A. The other folk wanted to grade it, but I just ripped them off and said it doesn't exist. So that's how I survived advanced philosophy. But after I survived, I thought, why don't I read the stuff real? So I started reading. And lo and behold, that intrigued me so much that I kept reading and reading and reading, and I really enjoyed it. But I was going to major in science, chemistry, or physics. And that was going to be my ballot paper. But I changed later, which I invite you to consider who you are, who you're becoming, and who you want to be. Because when I came here, I was going to be this science major. And I still love science. My staff knows that when they are to give me any kind of book or article to read, if it's not law, science. And then I read carefully and discuss with them and have great times on these matters. But when I came, I was going to be in science. But I changed. I changed because so much was going on at the time. The civil rights movement was going on. In my home state, we had killings, lynchings, and I wanted to be a part of the solution. And I was taking chemistry and biology, and I had these labs all day, it seems like every day. I was taking all this advanced math, but I thought that if I stayed in those areas at that time, that I would miss out on my passion, which is to be involved in Mississippi. You see, before I came here, I had some peculiar, special experiences. Now, I should have shared them with my student classmates, but quite frankly, I didn't. I didn't think that was necessarily important to do so. Now I've changed my mind. I wish I had taught more, shared more. You see, while I was in Mississippi, growing up, I wanted to challenge our special social and political system. So when I had an opportunity to go to the local movie theater, after the Supreme Court said that we could attend, then I was the first to integrate that local movie theater. When I was told that I could go to the library, well, they didn't exactly tell me I could go. I got really angry because I had a book that I needed for a book report, and they wouldn't send that book down to the black library. So out of anger, I just strolled up to the white library, went and got the book. And for my troubles, a white police officer who was called pulled a gun on me, and he was determined to shoot me. And my play sister, who was there with me, was begging me to put the book back, and I said, no, I'm not going to put it back. And so the officer started trembling because he was trying to conjure up the courage to pull that trigger. Well, the white librarian saved me. She ran and threw herself around me, and I was absolutely shocked she did that. She embraced me with her back to the shooter and said, how can you shoot this kid when he just wants education that you say he doesn't need? Well, the librarians then escorted me out of the library after they promised to send me the book down to the Carver Library, Black Library. And then when I went to go to the train depot, and I heard that blacks would go to the train depot. So I decided that it was time for me to go. Now, I had a little small problem. I wasn't going anywhere. I had one other little problem in going down to the train depot. I had no money. So I had no destination, I had no money, but I was attending a school for exceptional students that summer at Jackson State University, funded by the Ford Foundation. And there was a guy named, I call him Pookie, Matthew. Pookie sounds good. And so Pookie knew that I didn't want him in my car again. Now, I had backed the car out of the driveway. It was kind of late, and the car just backed out of the street. And since it backed out of the street, I got in it and drove off him. My mother had told me not to take the car. I didn't. It kind of backed out on its own. And then once it backed out on its own, then the only thing I could do was get in it. And then I need to go around the block and come back, but before I come back, I decided to go to a club. Had no business going. But in Mississippi at that time, your money was your age. So all these clubs that restricted students on account of their ages had no restriction if the student had some money. So I knew I was going to pick some guys up with some money, so we went out. Well, we had gone out that night, and those guys had consumed a little too much, including Pookie. And so I told him when he got in my car that I thought he had too much, and I don't want an accident in my car because I got to take this car back home. Well, anyway, he had an accident, and he vomited in the car, and I told him he'd never, ever get in my car again. We only had about, I think, 2 or 3 more weeks left for that special class, and I told him, don't worry about getting in this car, you'll never get in. Well, the other folk wanted to ride with me because I'm local. I'm in Jackson, so I knew all the clubs and the places to go, the things to do. You know, any of y'all know how to party? No. Any of y'all know how to dance? Miss Jackson, no, I told you I was going to cut your head next time. But you all, no, y'all don't do things like that. But anyway, back to where I was. So, I didn't let Pookie get in my car. Now, but when I woke up that morning, that fateful morning, and decided to integrate the train depot without any money, without any destination, I remembered that Pookie came from New Orleans and at some point got to buy a ticket to go back home. So, he has money, he has purpose and destination, but he knows he can't get in my car. So I went over to him and I said, Pookie, I've been really hard on you. I've been really, really hard on you. And I'm going to apologize. Now, aren't you going back to New Orleans pretty soon? He says, yeah. I said, you got to buy your train ticket, don't you? He says, yeah. I said, let's go get the train ticket today, Pookie. He says, you going to drive me down there? Yeah, Pookie. You know, you and I, tight. I said, he said, yeah. I said, everything is everything. Now, you know, sometimes in my community, where I grew up in the worst part of Jackson, you know, we had shortcuts on how we talked. You know, like,